This is Basic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Alan Reeve is the founder of Reeve Software, a company that started in 1984 creating software for the Atari 8-bit computers. Reeve Software published a variety of applications, including Diamond GOS, News Station and News Station Companion, Publishing Pro, The Business Manager, and Diamond Write. The company's games included Battle Tank, Bomber, Castle Attack, Space Hunt, and Star Intruder. This interview took place on October 14th, 2017.
I got into computers in 6th grade. Elementary school, got an Apple II computer. I was invited to do a little special class before school, which one of the ladies that was involved with the PTA taught a class in that on basic programming. I did that, and it was right up my alley. And after that, I basically begged and pleaded over the next year for my parents to get me a computer. Eventually, they relented and basically gave me a small budget of $400 to get a computer with. It's going to be like a combination birthday Christmas gift. So I spent another several months trying to figure out whether to get a VIC-20 or an Atari 400 or TN-1984A. And well, obviously I went with the Atari 400. And it just grew from there. So probably I think I got that, late 7th grade, early 8th grade. So
Nice. And what did you start doing with it? Did you jump straight into programming, or were you just playing games? How were you using it?
I of course got Star Raiders and that, that being the classic game on it, really an outstanding title. But also was very much into programming. I got a subscription to Analog magazine at some point in time. Ended up getting into basic programming. Basic programming really had quite a few limitations, and then there were those cool programs in Analog that consisted of a bunch of data statements and hexadecimal code, and it's like, what on earth do these do? And that, and, eventually, learned about that, learned assembly language programming, and so I very distinctly remember getting 2 games one day. I think it was like Pac-Man and Defender, sitting up in my bedroom and that, playing those for about 6 hours straight. And that, I still enjoy games in that, but that really, was kind of overflow in that. And that point in time I was far more interested in the programming side of things than playing games on the computer.
Sure. Nice. So what year did you say you got the Atari?
That probably would have been around 82-ish.
All right.
I guess 81, 82.
All right. So,
trying to think when I was in 6th grade, that would have been 81, and I think probably about 82.
So you were in 8th grade or so when you started Reeve Software?
That was probably 9th or 10th grade. I belonged to a user group called Centauri in Wheaton, Illinois. Met some people there. And so several influences. I'm trying to remember the first title was, the first title that I really remember in that going with, I think at one point in time, I started a little company called Mls Software, and we tried to do a game, but that really didn't go anywhere. And then a gentleman named Bruce Kay, who did Z Magazine initially, he was kind of the founder of that.
Sure.
He challenged me with creating a program that would let you use a CX85 keypad on the Atari with most software, and that created that was where the Reeve key and Super Reeve key and so forth came from. And I think that was the first thing that really had any significant sales. It was like, okay, maybe you're onto something here.
Nice. So, how much did it sell, and did you make any money off it, or is it just
I don't really remember the numbers. I mean, when you're in 8th grade,
sure,
just getting a few checks in the mail for $20 was a pretty big deal.
Right.
I don't remember how many in that. Money probably went for other Atari stuff and that.
Sure.
I remember getting a disk drive. Probably 8th, 9th grade. That was, of course, a parental purchase because I needed that in order to make the Super Reeve in the first place. I'm sure some of that money went towards the first modem. Atari 130XE came after that to get the upgrade there. And I'm trying to think where the Reeve would have fit into that. That would have been before the 130XE because I needed that in order to do it, because it relied on the bank switch memory in order to achieve that. But yeah, the timeline's a little fuzzy with some of that stuff. I mean,
sure.
This was, 35 years ago?
Yeah, this was a long time ago. I know you made a bunch of software. I've got a list here, but I don't know what order things came in. So maybe we can just kind of try to piece together what order things came
Sure.
in. I'll just help your memory here by listing what I've got here. News Station Companion, Publishing Pro, Diamond GOS, of course, Battle Tank, Bomber, Castle Attack, Evader, Space Hunt, and Star Intruder is the list that I've come up with.
Evader was that game under Promega Software.
Okay.
And actually that was a combination thing in that a guy named Dave wrote the core of the game there. I made some modifications to it, and then I added a construction set to it. But the core game is actually written by him. And then the other games basically were pretty bad. I just really wasn't much of a game programmer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those were also the earlier titles where I didn't know quite as much.
But even Evader, is a machine language game, so you weren't. You say it's bad.
I knew machine language,
yeah.
But he did the bulk of the programming there in terms of. He certainly did the music and that because he was a pretty talented guy in terms of the graphics and sound, which I was pretty devoid of talent with. That's why I got more into the application type programming. But a lot of those games were probably the first things. Reeve came after that. Then News Station came along. News Station was, of course, born out of the fact that people wanted a newsroom type product. I figured out how to read print shop images directly from print shop data disks, which made that quite a bit more powerful because there's just so much artwork out there in the print shop format.
Sure.
News Station Companion was an add-on to that, which added some additional utility. I don't even remember what that was. Publishing Pro was a pretty ambitious project, and that just really never quite met what I'd hoped to have. I was trying to go more desktop publishing in that, and we're talking 10th grade at this time, and I can't remember if I had any real exposure to SoftLogic's Atari ST desktop publishing program then or not, whether I'd even seen it or whatnot. But the goal there was to try to be able to lay out an entire page document, which in the case of News Station, basically you divided the page into 8 pieces or 8 bitmaps, and that's basically what you use pretty much all the memory for. In the case of Publishing Pro, the idea was to be a little bit more object-oriented. I guess before object-oriented was really in vogue, and basically say this paragraph is going to go here, and then render later. And I remember having limited success with that, and it just not kind of being what I initially wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And then after that was probably Diamond GOS. That was probably the largest, well, it was definitely the biggest project on the Atari 8-bits. And that's probably the one that I'm most known for.
Sure. So with that, my assumption is you saw the Atari ST and was like, I bet my 8-bit can do that. And tell me the story.
Yeah, certainly. So I saw the Atari ST. I'm not sure whether, again, to some degree in that the timeline, because I ended up getting an Atari ST. By group, I remember, I think I'm going to say 86ish, 87ish was when it started. I remember the first Diamond GOS was on a floppy, and then I got involved with Shelley Merrill on that to get it onto a cartridge, and that was a interesting series of events.
Yeah, I'm super interested in that. How did you create the cartridges? And they're all bank switched and everything. It wasn't even a simple cart. How did you get them manufactured and out into the world?
Sure. So when it started off in that, it was a disk-based application. Again, memory was pretty much in short supply on the Atari 8-bits. And And I remember there was Go, which is David Sullivan's project, and he was working with, what was it, Merrill Ward was the name of the company that they were going to do. And they were going to release a competitor. And then one day I got a call from Shelley Merrill and that saying that things weren't going as well there. And he wanted to do something with Diamond GOS. And, a lot of big talk about getting into Sears and being on David Letterman and things like that, which is kind of amusing in that. But when you're, this is probably more, college years. That was, I think it was sophomore year of college that a lot of that stuff was going on. So I would have been, 19-ish?
Mm-hmm.
But so he called me in that, started working together. And I know Atari was a factor because I do have I still actually have it to this day, in that the Atari sample cartridge that I could use. But in the end, we ended up going with ICD's cartridge. And I'm not sure whether it was a technology thing in that. I think it was probably more just the availability, and then ICD was a little bit easier to get the cartridges from. And ultimately, ICD was kind of both the beginning and the end of Diamond GOS. They sold us the cartridge shells. They basically created a version of the PLA in that. There was a different spot in memory in that where Sparta DOS would bank, Diamond GOS would bank. Express 1050 also ended up using the ICD cartridge model, so they got another memory location that they would bank on. So it was basically 8K banks of memory. It took a little bit of time to figure out how to put that together. I even recall an interrupt-related bug in that with regard to that, where the cartridge would crash in that, and it took several days to figure out how to get around that. But in the end, gave us 64K of memory in that off of one 8K slot. Basically, calls would be made at an entry point in Diamond GOS. It would bank select to the right spot, do the work, return, probably bank back, and let us do a lot of stuff. And I remember a lot of, there's some unpleasantness in that with regard to, and obviously David's feelings were a little bit hurt with Shelley Merrill. I remember him calling me about that, and about some of the challenges that he had in working with Shelley. Shelley never really did what he said he was going to do, in terms of the Atari stuff and such. And at one point in time, even ended up fulfilling orders for us. And, of course, we never saw any of that money. But kind of where that went.
Yeah. The Diamond GOS got covered pretty widely. Atari Explorer and the Antic Magazine did a big 2-part interview with you, plus a separate, you were the cover story on in June 1989. Seems like a big deal.
Yeah, back then, I was going to Atari shows and doing demonstrations of it, doing talks. I remember doing one in Texas. I remember going to the Anaheim show. Actually, that was kind of interesting in that we went out to Anaheim, and my parents were really very supportive in that. Things could not have happened without them. When I was off at college and that, they were, even back home fulfilling orders and things for me and that, making copies and so forth of discs and putting labels on and shipping out stuff when I was gone. But my mom actually went with me to the I believe it was World of Atari at that time show in Anaheim. Yeah. And we were able to run into Sig Hartman. And she actually gave him, I believe, like 3 copies of the cartridge and that. She was really trying to, help me get him with Atari and such. And, Sig was actually, no, I don't need 3 copies and that, one's fine. And that, no, take 3, and wanted to help out. But, that ultimately didn't go anywhere. And it's just kind of funny looking back as a, now that I'm an adult, versus a, 19, 20-year-old kid, and that looking back thinking, why would Atari really want to, create a graphic operating system on their, 8-bit cell? Why would they want to cannibalize their own sales to some degree? It really wouldn't have made a lot of sense. I'm not at all surprised that Atari, maybe they talked in that to egg people on. I think that was probably more to us. But I just can't imagine that there was any true interest in bringing Diamond GOS as a pack-in, as Shelley had indicated to us, and it'd be nice to have been in on those conversations if there were actually any. But who knows? Also remember, seeing, because Shelley hopefully ended up getting some negative press, and that ended up rubbing off on me, because he would take orders and in some cases, I guess, charge and not fulfill them. I don't remember the exact details, but I remember reading some newsletter from some user group and that was questioning my business ethics, which I guess when you deal with somebody and that doesn't necessarily do what they say they're going to do, I guess you do get a little bit caught up in that. Although I personally don't think I did anything to warrant that directly.
I like the it made me laugh when the Atari Explorer article. You're talking about it in the Antic article, but the Atari Explorer review, the reviewer said Diamond GOS works great and everything looks fine, but why should I learn a graphical operating system? I like to do it the other way. And I just thought,
yeah, you're not gonna,
where's that guy now?
Nowadays without that, but it's all 20/20 hindsight. You get used to. I mean, you see it today, and that
Sure.
People don't want to generally learn new stuff if they know how to do it one way. So, but yeah, the Atari years were certainly interesting in that. Diamond GOS did pretty well. It was kind of frustrating at the end in that, because basically what killed it off is I got a call from ICD. I presume it was Tom himself, and that called me to let me know I had one more chance to order ICD cartridges, and that was going to be it. And felt very pressuring, and then try to place some sort of large order that I would have no idea whether or not I would be able to sell. And those cartridges themselves were pretty costly. I don't remember exactly what they cost, and that probably somewhere around $6-8 each.
Yeah.
So we're not dealing with a multi-million-dollar company here, and that I didn't have enough money to be outlaid to buy 500 or 1,000 or whatever. So like I said, and I was quite honestly a little bit ticked off that out of nowhere I get your business is about to end, and I have very little control over it. I even looked into trying to get the PLAs and the circuit boards and stuff produced myself, or even possibly changing the architecture of them or something like that, because ultimately Diamond GOS, you had an entry point, you pass basically a code as far as you wanted it to do. So it was not tied to a particular cartridge architecture, as long as you followed the rules of programming outlaid in the manual.
Mm-hmm.
But I just didn't have the means to do that. That's
Sure.
ultimately what killed it off.
Yeah. It seems like this was kind of getting late in the 8-bit's life anyway. I mean, we're talking 1990 and past that.
It was, and Atari's busy pushing their Atari ST.
Right. Yeah.
Ultimately, that's one of the challenges all those companies had over the PC world. In the PC world, okay, here's a computer. Now I can sell you this add-on card. Now I can sell you this better add-on card. Now I can sell you this. Now, I mean, it's pretty much expected in the PC world that you're going to be, nowadays probably upgrading your computer to get a better CPU and such. But certainly, buying extra cards or whatnot. And that was sound cards in the 90s and so forth. That was pretty regular updates, graphic cards today.
Sure.
With the Atari 8-bits, it's a packaged system.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't any really great way to expand them and that. So, companies had to basically find new people to sell Atari computers to. Did people want to spend, I think in my Atari lifetime and that I bought two computers. I bought an Atari 400. With the help of my dad, we were able to upgrade it to 48K. And then ended up getting the 130XE with the 128K. I didn't get too heavily into adding bank switched memory just because that didn't seem super useful. There were not a whole lot of programs out there to take advantage of it. You might have a program that can, hey, look, this program copies an entire double density disk, and that without having to do 8 disk selects. Well, okay, that's nice, but I'm not spending a lot of time copying double density disks. So it's tough for Atari in that they want to sell you a new Atari 520 ST or 1040 ST. They don't want to sell you another game or another cartridge. They want to upgrade your computer.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately one of the things that just really made the PC and realistically the Apple II world probably far more lucrative. I remember what was one of the guys, I can't remember the name of that. One of the sales and marketing guys in that when I was buying advertising in Antique magazine. But he came over in that and, talked about, advertising. And he basically told me that he wished he had made a different decision than that a year or two ago and gone into the PC world. all the money was.
Yeah.
So, I had another program in that that I'd done, and that was the Business Manager.
I don't know about that one. It was just called the Business Manager?
Program called the Business Manager. Yeah, it's called the Business Manager. It was reviewed in Antique magazine. And I remember being so disappointed because I called up and talked to Nat Friedland, who was the editor of Antique magazine. And he told me, the review is fantastic in that. It says it renews my faith in Atari computers or something like that. I was like, man, I can't wait. I'm going to sell 1 million of these. And then the review comes out and, the review's there, but it doesn't say that. That was a quote from a different review.
Aw.
Okay. So, the Business Manager was a little accounts receivable program. A lady that had a Shackley business and that knew a guy that knew me. And I guess it never got finished off, so I finished it off. And actually, I don't know if you recall the Rat, which is basically a mouse for the Atari 8-bit computer.
Sure, yeah.
The guy that was doing those. He contacted me, and we added a little Rat interface to it, which ultimately, when you look back at that, it's kind of a little bit funny because all it was is on the front screen of the Business Manager, you had six areas you could go into the program. Create an invoice, record the invoices paid, exit. Had a little graphic screen. You could point at one of those 6 things with the Rat, and that was about it. Once you clicked on that, it was an entirely text-based interface. So you could say it was Rat compatible. And then I also remember the Rat because basically it was a TRS-80 mouse, and that with a new label on it and a different end connector that could plug into an Atari mouse.
Clever. Nice.
That thing that was not very good. Because that actually feeds into the whole Diamond GOS thing, and that because realistically you wanted a nice mouse. So I tried playing around with the Rat, and it's like it's a lot of jitter in that. For your X position, 3 4 5 4 5 5 4 3 4 5. And it's like I tried messing around with different algorithms to stabilize it, but it just the hardware just was not there. So I ended up getting the Atari ST mouse and plugging that in and puzzling over that. And that ended up being basically 2 bits for X and 2 bits for Y that you'd see toggle. So as you'd move, you'd see those, 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1. Well, I guess technically 0 1 2 3 0 1 2 3. You'd move in each direction for those 2 bits. But I couldn't read them in that. I couldn't just write a little program because as you moved it, it would move a bunch of times. So I ended up having to code it into the display list interrupt. So it would be able to read it multiple times per second and that really quickly. And then once it was done with the display list interrupt, process all that data. That's how I ended up actually getting the mouse support to work in the Diamond GOS. And I remember seeing on Go and that it looks like he actually did that a little bit better of a way. And that looked like he ended up using pokey interrupts or something like that I just was not familiar with at the time.
Do you still have any of the software or any of the source code or anything? Not all of it has been archived by the Atari people, so
should have been. I actually sent the discs off to a gentleman last year with all the Diamond GOS stuff on.
Oh, cool.
So that's all out there.
Oh, is it? Good. Some of the I think News Station I believe isn't available.
Right, yeah, that's correct. Some of the other stuff like News Station and stuff, I'm not sure I had or whatnot. But it was, I know I sent the Diamond GOS stuff to him and that to archive and release, and he did that. And part of it's my Atari setup, and that my disk drive seemed a little flaky. I have a couple 1050s that seem to be in various states of disrepair. And then I have a micro mainframe disk drive that seems to work okay.
So you still have your Atari?
Hard time. I do. I still have my Atari 130XE.
Nice.
That I did Diamond GOS on. A fair amount of my Atari stuff was sold off. Another major peripheral I used to create the Diamond GOS was a T56 I can't remember, a KMIO device from ICD. And that That was really nice because that made the builds so much faster than using disks. And I very distinctly remember I was probably the only kid in college with an EEPROM burner in my dorm room. I remember sitting there, and then I didn't have. At one point in time, I didn't have an EEPROM eraser in that, so you had a bunch of these chips sitting in the sunlight, hoping the sunlight would erase them, and that until we finally realized that that's not terribly efficient. I ended up getting an EEPROM eraser for it. But I sacrificed my social life in second year of college so I could do Diamond GOS.
Did all the software help fund your college?
Yeah, basically. I mean, we basically covered college and that. So when I left college, I was debt free.
Cool.
My parents were pretty good about saving too, and that. So
yeah, nice. So you made the transition to ST for a while, didn't you? Did some more software for that?
I did, and I think did I port News Station over to the ST at one point in time? I know I tried to do a hockey game, bits and pieces. But again, I don't think that ever really went anywhere until the big program I did on the Atari ST that seemed to be pretty successful was a program called MacC, which let you read Macintosh disks. And that was as the Atari ST moved into the desktop publishing realm.
Cool. Nice. And you're still doing software today? Sounds like. Tell me about that.
Yeah. I got into computer software, like I said, when I was in sixth grade and that, learning basic programming, and it just stuck. That seemed to be my talent. So yeah, I'm a professional software developer, and that's been my career. Entrepreneurial efforts in that have always been there. In fact, up until about a few years ago, and that I was doing programming on a product called ConcuAgent, which is basically a content management system for real estate websites. But when the real estate market started to decline, we lost a fair amount of clients. And nowadays, it seems like everybody and his brother does websites, so it's a pretty tough business to be in. And add that to the fact that one of the things that makes those types of products a little bit different from just a generic content management system is your Mls Integration, which is basically getting data from listing services. And nowadays, the listing services are all starting to jump on charging fees, which is a nice little racket to be in that you have all these real estate agents out there giving you data, and then you sell it back to them.
Yeah, it seems like a good gig. Yeah.
Yeah, I need to run an MLS instead. So.
Cool. So what do you do in your spare time besides software? What's fun for you?
I have several hobbies in that. I'm still very much into the software, and one of the things that's kind of kept me a little bit connected with the Atari commuters. I'm very much into the whole retro gaming type stuff. Although, ironically, not so much for the playing of the retro games, just because, the nostalgic value. So I do have my, like I said, my Atari set up, and then I have a Commodore 64 set up. I have an Apple II set up, all with the little flash drive readers, mainly just because I can.
Oh yeah, those are cool.
They're playing games on them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Although I do remember there's a device called a CFFA for the Apple II, which is basically one of your SD card readers for that. And I remember back when I was in that big decision of what computer to get, I probably would have loved to have gotten an Apple II if it was in the budget, just because that was the first computer I touched. But I remember an ad for a game called Thief on the Apple II, and I always wanted to play it. And last year, I finally, for the first time, got to play that game, which is basically a Berserk clone on the Apple II. So that was kind of nice. And then I haven't touched it since. So got this little device sitting in the Apple II. I haven't even touched it.
There's an annual Apple II conference called Kansas Fest that you might enjoy. Just go to kansasfest.org to look it up. It's 100 Apple II geeks, and probably enjoy yourself very much.
Actually, up here, there's something called the Vintage Computing Festival Midwest that I've been going to, and they have a bunch of, SCAD, which is one of the local Atari clubs that was around when I was growing up. They still have a few people that I guess get together for that, and they'll have a presence there. And I've also been watching the 1088 XE or something like that.
Oh yeah,
that new one motherboard project. I'm kind of watching that because I certainly wouldn't mind getting one of those.
Yeah, that looks like fun.
I suspect one day my Atari 8-bit will die, and I'm more of a software guy than a hardware guy, and that's how I don't really like the idea of having to solder stuff.
All right, so what haven't I asked you about the early days of your company that I should have?
I should have prepared something. I'm trying to think more of the interesting type stuff. Super Reeve Key was born out of a guy named Bruce that really helped me get started with business. He was the one that kind of encouraged me to get some of these games, and a couple of local vendors at clubs like SCAT were willing to buy a couple copies, and that, although they certainly were not hot games. One of the things that got me into, actually, you mentioned things that got me into doing business for myself. I know exactly what the impetus for that was now.
Yeah,
I had sent my game, I think it was called Battle Tank or something, where basically you were actually a turret in the middle in that, and tanks were approaching you, and you had to shoot them. So it was a battle zone type game, written by someone that really didn't have the ability to write a battle zone type game. So I was, you're in the middle in that, you can go left and right, and tanks are coming, you got to shoot them before they get to your turret. I sent that off to Analog Magazine, to try to be their game of the month type thing. And I got my rejection letter, and I said, I still think this is actually, pretty good. So I actually started trying to sell it myself. And I just thought, this is going to be a waste of time if I'm, constantly submitting in that, hoping that something gets submitted. I'd done that with actually back with the Dungeons and Dragons type stuff when I was in 4th, 5th grade, and I'd written a little module for that. And then, I got, well, this is better than a lot of what we receive. It's still, has some work, and we encourage you to continue working. And I got one of those letters from Analog, and I said, I'm just going to start trying to self-publish. So I did that, and, met quite a few people in that. Bruce was an integral part of learning business. He helped me with the business manager and that, some ideas. We ended up taking business manager and putting in a nice little binder, so it looked like a more professional type product. The Reeve Key in that did pretty well. And at that point in time, there's also another program, the Backup Master. That was another program that did really well. I was really into, copy protection schemes and things like that. And Backup Master had similar technology to the Reeve Key. Bruce helped me market stuff. And then I got involved with, Horizon Computers, which is an Atari distributor out in Denver. Phil Michelson, that was the name of the guy. So they actually started helping with distribution, and that helped. Started getting orders from independent vendors. I remember having a company in Texas, and an Atari dealer in Texas call up and order like 25 copies of Backup Master one day.
Wow.
And obviously, that's, seeing the sales and that's pretty positive feedback to continue developing stuff. But trying to come up with, new ideas for programs, that was the challenge, things that people actually wanted. So that got things going. Bruce was, pretty instrumental in helping market stuff. As I mentioned, he helped get that Z magazine started with the Atari stuff. And then that kind of led into, I think he had left the state by the time Diamond GOS came out. But yeah, the Atari ST was certainly a big part of that. Diamond GOS, I'm trying to remember how much, Shelley had in terms of, growing it. He certainly got it into computer dealers, because I remember that being the first time seeing one of my products really advertised, heavily in magazines and that by companies that are selling Atari software. It's just too bad it wasn't pure. In fact, I remember at the end of the dealing with him, he tried to give me the guilt trip about fulfilling his orders and that. Okay, we'll give you the remaining inventory of Diamond Write manuals or something like that. If you give me a copy of the software so I can send it to all the people that ordered it that I owe it to. And it's like, the orders you got for this, you certainly deserve your cut, but I think I should be getting my cut too.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem very fair in that, okay, I'll take all the money and here's some printed manuals for you to. So I did not do that, and I remember the box of printed manuals still showed up anyway. So I don't know. I guess he just wanted to get them out of the house or something. But I don't know. It was a challenge. And I remember one of my mom's quotes in that she could not believe this guy would come over to my house and look me in the face at dinner, and then ultimately, not do the stuff that he said he was going to do.
Yeah. Huh. If you could send a message to the Atari 8-bit community that still exists, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
Well, that's another difficult thing. I mean, I'm for both progress and retro in that, and I'll confess I don't understand some of the aspect of all the expansions and so forth that are being still created. I'll watch. There's a guy with a YouTube channel that periodically puts videos out there with some. I guess the most recent one I saw was for the SysCheck 2.2 board.
Yeah, near Dairy.
And
I've seen that channel.
I look at some of the stuff, and I'm kind of intrigued because that's not where it's at for me. I'm interested in being able to play the retro type games, and I'm interested in kind of the flash devices, given the bit rot that happens with your magnetic media. But some of these extra improvements, applications, things like that, I don't quite understand why people want to do that versus trying to grow the PC world or the Mac world or whatever floats your boat. By the same token, it kind of interests me because yet I'm busy there watching it, and I'm busy considering maybe I should get one of these boards. I really do actually like my Atari computer, and that it's very, very much a nostalgic thing. It was good memories.
I think I have what I need, Alan. Thank you very much.
Okay, hey, no problem.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute, there are two ways you can help. You can help fund these interviews directly by contributing to my Patreon. A small monthly contribution will help offset the expenses of making these oral history interviews. Contribute at patreon.com/Savitz. Or make a tax-deductible contribution to the Internet Archive, a nonprofit digital library that has done incredible things to preserve computer history. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate. Thanks.